Over the course of the year, we let the grasses and forbs in our lawn grow up, only mowing them twice per year, once in early June and another time in late September. This lawn area slowly transitions into a more wild meadow, which we seeded back in November and December of 2021. Given that the seed heads and hollow stems serve as food and protection for birds, wildlife, and insects in the fall and winter months, we leave the meadow uncut until the following spring. This past year, we dotted a number of trees in throughout some areas of the meadow, and I also wanted to see what seedlings I could identify that were starting to germinate. So I did a most impractical activity of weed whacking the entire 9-acre meadow. And I got out later in the spring again to cut back some of the larger, pushier grasses around some of the trees that we had planted. This grass is so tough. All right. Oh, so if you can believe it, I actually weed whacked 9 acres of this whole place. Kind of unbelievable, dropping things left and right. And you got grass on your thing, you might need to clean that up. This is some really crazy grass. This is like forage grass. This is some of our non-native grass. It was probably used as like fodder for cattle at some point. Probably makes a nice good hay. Yeah, if you could believe it, this is already grown up from like a couple weeks ago when I actually just kind of decimated the whole area. Really, because we're maintaining this as a meadow, we want to keep the grass in the area mowed once a year. So I wanted to keep the grass and the seed heads up during the winter time for seed heads for the birds, and also sometimes our insects will overwinter in some of the hollow stems. So I got out here as early as I could in spring and I started to weed whack. There were a couple areas that I didn't weed whack, but this area in particular tends to be very grassy. And I know string trimming / weed whacking is probably not the most efficient way to cut down herbaceous material in 9 acres, but it's what we had. Plus I planted all these tiny little trees in the meadow. So just dotting them throughout. So it's not just like full meadow, but we have some key iconic trees that are planted in the area. And I didn't want to risk having a tractor come in and remove some of the hard work that we did in planting some of those trees. So I'll have to come out and probably string trim around those trees that we had planted, because this grass will get up to like, you know, up to my shoulders. So I'll show you. Basically, I either stop, oh, look at that, a little bufo. Hello, hi, hi. Let me help you find your way back to the pond, okay? It's a little toad. Let's help him back. Come on. There you go. Let me clean off your lens. I'm a messy string trimmer. So typically I will string trim up until the point that my arms fall off or my batteries die. And typically my batteries never die because I'll show you what we do. Because this is such a large area, it's such a pain in the butt to actually have to go back. These batteries, if I'm string trimming like constantly, will last for about, I would say, roughly 30 minutes. And then I just have the charging stations here. These are the Makita charging stations, and I basically have a round of either 6 to 8 batteries, depending on if Saunders using any for his tools. So we try to get all Makita tools in order to be able to have all the same batteries. Obviously we can't do that for everything, but a lot of our tools are Makita. And then I just use the EcoFlow. So this is the Delta 2 Max. This is one of their new ones that we're actually testing out. We've already been using EcoFlow for a lot of different reasons. Saunders actually explicated a number of the different reasons that we've used EcoFlow. You definitely are going to be building some muscles with this. It's probably close to somewhere between 45 and 50 pounds. Between that and the weed whacking, you really get a strong muscle. So anyway, so we'll let this grass grow up. I wanted to actually take down it another notch around here, but let's walk through the field because there's quite a bit that started to crop up. Some of this was already in the seed bank. It's almost impossible to get some of the seed out of the seed bank unless we actually did maybe an herbicide application, and that's not something that we wanted to do. So we did kind of a more gentle route where we did green manure. Obviously we had like 6 to 8 inches of gravel in some areas. You could still see some gravel bits here and there. We'll have sedum actually growing in some of the gravel. This was actually already in the seed bank. This is Zizia aurea. This is Golden Alexander's. And we actually had removed a number of this when we started to disc the soil. We didn't do any kind of heavy tilling or anything like that. Disking is really just the first couple inches of the soil. So this seed remained in the seed bank. And because we saw this growing well here, I ended up getting more of this seed because I already knew that this was growing well within the meadow. And this is obviously one of our native species here, so we really loved it, and it started to clump up around here. Then this is kind of a new one. We have patches of this all throughout the land, and this is Jacob's Ladder. And this is so beautiful. I love looking out of the meadow house onto this little patch of purple, and the honeybees and the bumblebees and some of our native insects really love Jacob's Ladder, especially the bumblebees. They kind of go crazy for this type of flower structure, which is really nice. And then we could walk up this way. Some of that Ajuga reptans was already in the seed bank here. This is most of the stuff that we actually moved out. This is the multiflora rose. You could see that maybe we didn't get some of the roots in here. But this is part of the reason why if you want to keep this a meadow, you have to mow it like once a year, or otherwise these shrubs and quaking aspens or cottonwoods or whatever your early pioneer trees that are going to be moving in, it's going to move to forest. So part of the reason why we wanted to actually keep this a meadow is because, well, for one, it would start blocking the view of the faraway views that we actually have. And this also gives us another habitat that we hadn't had before. So even though I want to plant a few trees in here, we still want to keep it meadow. We want to keep some areas even rocky because we do get some resident killdeers here that we love to see. And they basically build their nests in like shallow dishes. Well, this tree doesn't look like it survived, does it? No, actually, no, that's not true. The buds are growing here. It just got crispy leaves up top. You can see the buds here. I think this tree is just a little service berry, actually. Let's go up here because I want to show one of the plants that I know we planted that's coming up, and it hasn't actually flowered yet. This area was recently torn up a little bit because we had to put some more drainage in it. So that had been seeded, and now we have to probably reseed it again. Here's one of those Japanese honeysuckles. So when I see those, I try to just take them out, and you can see how easy they were to actually take out when they're that small. So some of the other plants that we had planted, and you can see this is an area that I did not actually cut back yet. Otherwise, all these seed heads would have been cut off. But this is our black-eyed Susans. So this is a nice little patch of black-eyed Susans that have come in. And they kind of are sprinkled throughout the whole meadow. This is one of our horse chestnuts that we got from Coldwater Pond Nursery. And we've done a couple tours with Coldwater Pond Nursery, and we have another one that's going to be coming up. We ended up getting some more trees because we really love the fact that he grows them out not too far, just an hour away from where we are. And those trees really have a sense of the climate that we're in, and they tend to grow really well here, and they don't have to travel too far. Sometimes I get like trees or shrubs and I order them online and they have to be shipped. And that's kind of unfortunate because sometimes you don't get a chance to obviously pick the tree or the shrub that you get. Let's see if I could find some of the lupin on this side. I know it's growing on the other side. And one of the things that when I was string trimming, one of the things that it really allowed me to see were some of the seedlings that were coming up. And I got really excited when I saw something that, we had planted. So here's an example of the lupin. All the other green is starting to come in, so it's easy to miss it. Here's some more that are coming in. And I'm gonna be really curious if this flowers this year. We're only on year 2 with the meadow. So if you recall, this area was pretty bare. And the fact that things are starting to come in now gets me really excited. But there's obviously still a lot of things that are in here that haven't been, haven't been planted and are just coming up. These are some of the plants that, these are delphiniums. These are some plants that I had planted before, and some of the grasses as well. Those were a little larger. They weren't like seeds. Most of the stuff that I planted are seeds. This is another one of the horse chestnuts that we actually planted. And this one, I wish we planted this a little bit closer. This one's called Marble Chip. And this you could see the pink colors and the coppery colors to this. And the reason why we have this encasement over it is we had, last year we had a mama deer come in and she fawned 2 baby deers. And then so they ended up like eating a number of these trees. Luckily, this has recovered and most of the trees have recovered. We have had some situations where some of the trees did not recover between the deer browse and the spongy moth outbreak and the drought. I mean, we could walk this meadow all day, but I want to keep this relatively short. But one thing I will point out is if you could see some of these larger, more succulent leaves here, this is some of the alliums that I planted. So I planted 3,000 alliums, if you recall, back in the fall. I don't remember what month. And all sorts of different sizes, but I planted some beefy ones in here as well. And you could see that they are about to break bud. Here are some of the smaller ones. I could tell that they have like a little bit more succulent leaves here. So they kind of look grassy. But part of the reason why I wanted to try to plant some of the alliums basically along a path, the path needs to be remowed, but I planted them along the path so that when you're walking down the path, you see these beautiful, stately purple and white flowers. And my goal was to basically plant the different types of cultivars that will flower from June all the way through August. So our bulbs are just about finishing in the lawn, so they'll finish probably at the end of May. And as soon as the end of May hits, they're blooming from February, March, April, May, so a good like 3 months, 3.5 months. And then they move over into the alliums. So the alliums will go from like June to August. So it'll be really great to have all those bulbs kind of blooming. And some of these are quite large. And by the time their leaves are starting to look a little ratty, the grasses will be quite large and will hide those leaves. Because like I said, a lot of these grasses and a lot of the herbaceous matter will get quite tall. So anywhere between like 3 feet all the way up to 5 feet in some cases. Some of the sunflowers are even much taller than that. And I think the time that the meadow looks the best is in September. I mean, that's when you see all the helianthus, the black-eyed Susans, the sunflowers out, and the grasses are starting to get like a purple inflorescence. And when the light hits it, I just think it's just so marvelous. So year 2 of the meadow, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I got a lot of weed whacking in a couple areas to like finish that 9 acres. But luckily we got the EcoFlow charging the batteries, and I could just try to do it within a few hours, and I think I'll then be finished.
We'll share the progress of the meadow as the year unfolds. And if you're enjoying these videos, consider subscribing and hitting the notifications button on the channel. We are reinvesting 10% of our Google AdSense proceeds back into the Finger Lakes community, so your support goes a long way. We'll see you in the next video.